gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine Chisme podcast. I have Jo Delgado with me. How are you, Jo?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm busy, but good.
Busy is good, especially these days. I feel like everybody's just on this struggle bus with a lot of things this year, like last year and heading into this year. But that's why we're here. So we can try and get off of that bus and onto like the super highway, so to speak. Um,
Yes,
I
absolutely.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you here. And we're going to get into like all of the different things as far as branding and website design and humanizing your business, all of those things. But before we get into that chisme, before we
Uh-huh.
spill some chisme, we always start with the wine. So not everybody drinks wine, which is okay. Are you drinking wine today?
I am not, unfortunately. I'm just recovering from a little stomach bug. So I'm like, I really shouldn't have one. So I just have water.
Girl, I get that. I get that so hard. I do always have water with me, but I also do have wine. And actually, I was telling you, I'm recording from my parents' house, and my sister, she loves wine as well. And so I grabbed one of her wines, and this is an Edmundo. It's a 2022 Cabernet Sauvignon from Argentina. And
Oh,
yeah, I've never had it. So literally, I just decided to pour myself a little glass of that. So, and it's
okay.
in my RGNY little cup. So salud. Oh, that one doesn't get
Salud.
it.
Let me know how it tastes.
Oh, this is good. You know what? It's definitely more it's not as tannic as some Cabernets are. I don't mind the tannic Cabernets. I actually like when they're pretty dry. But this
See, I'm opposite. When they're
okay, well
super
you
dry, I'm
like
like,
oh, I love the pucker, right? I love like having I don't know why. But you know what's so weird too? I think it has to do like I've always liked that pucker because like even growing up, I would just eat like I would get like you know what a saladito is?
I'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like tangy, so it makes you do that.
So I get the saladito and put it in a lemon and just eat it like that. So I just like, I mean, that's obviously a lot of acidity and everything, but still just that puckering thing. I just like it. So this is definitely more of a fruity Cabernet. I'm looking at what this says. Okay, yeah, it says, oh yeah, flavors of dark cherry. That was definitely the first thing I got.
Mm.
Black currant with notes of vanilla. So it's definitely, like you said, like that cherry and that vanilla is it's
A little
definitely
sweeter.
Mhm. But it's good. I like it. I will drink this whole glass that I poured for myself.
I am definitely more of a whiskey drinker. So I debated, I'm like, do I grab some whiskey and say, like, for on my end, I'll do whiskey and cheese.
Hey, you know what?
But
They
I'm
are
recovering. I'm like, I should behave.
that's true. That's true. You want to make sure you're fully good. They do have whiskey barrel aged wines. So wines
Oh,
that
I
are
did not
aged
know
in
that.
whiskey
Okay.
barrels. Yeah. So wines that are aged in whiskey barrels, and those are so good. If you find like
Oh,
they
I
have
did not know those existed. Okay. I'll have to keep an eye out for those.
that's why I'm here, girl. Help you out. Share the information.
Oh, I'm here for it.
Well, I am super excited because let me read your bio. Jo is a Peruvian born sassy pants brand and website designer out to humanize businesses so her clients can get seen the way they deserve to be seen by those who matter, your buyers. For her, it is always strategy first, design later. And I love when you're sharing like it's true we don't have a lot of Latina brand and website designers in the industry. So to be able to work with other Latinas, I'm sure, and other people that come from communities of color, it's I was literally thinking about this earlier. And I was thinking how, you have all of these like Joyce Myers, or you have what's her name? Renee. something. I've like all these kind of like life coaches and stuff like that. For some, and I've never really followed them, right? I've never like even on social media, I'm like, okay, yeah, they come out with good information. They come out with, but there's always something that I'm like, something I just don't feel connected to them.
It's not quite as relatable to you.
Yes. And then something comes out like, oh, they said this, or oh, this happened, or oh, and I'm not just, these are just two examples. There have been, other people, but those are just the two that come to my mind. But and then you're like, sometimes your soul doesn't feel it. So it doesn't connect. So I love when when I am able to talk to and explore the businesses or explore the ideas of other people, other women that come from communities of color, because there's just something that connects, even if it's not like, not, maybe you might not be everybody's cup of tea, but just the fact that you can, like, there's going to be things that you can identify and see maybe better than others. Does that make sense? Like, I know I'm just starting, just jumping in, but
No, yeah, it absolutely makes sense. I think a big factor from, especially for example, as an example, us Latinas, it's how we grew up. It's just very different, I would say, than the average American family, especially with like first gen families. And like I was born in Peru, but I came to the States when I was just 5 years old. So I basically grew up here though. But I just feel also the way we grew up is very different. And, I had friends of all colors growing up, and my the only ones who truly could relate to how I grew up and like had the same experiences or similar experiences were those from other Latino households. So I think that's interesting how that works. And I think people take comfort in being able to relate to someone in that way.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. So when you moved here being 5 years old from Peru, what part of, did your parents move to California? Like what part of?
Yeah, we've always been in California. Because my aunt was here, my Tio was here with her husband, my Tio, and we came to live with them to start, and then we got our own little house. But yeah, I've been in California since from the start.
And being, because I actually have a couple other friends that are from Peru, born and raised in Peru, and came maybe even a little bit later than you did. Um, but obviously California, particularly Southern California, is definitely very Mexican influenced. It's very,
That was an
there's
adjustment.
yeah, I was about to ask you, like, how is that? Because you're not only just coming, obviously you're still Latina, but like all of our cultures are similar but
Very
very
different, yeah.
different.
Yes. Uh, I think the biggest adjustment being a Peruvian coming into a very Mexican centric area was the like this like actual Spanish, the language, because we use a lot of different words. And I'll just throw out a couple examples. So for example, for us, a tortilla is an omelet. But I know, we're like in Southern California, which Mexican restaurants everywhere. We go thinking we're gonna get breakfast, like an omelet. And we order tortilla and we get like a little, we're like, what? We don't use those in our dishes. Like we don't use tortillas in our dishes at all. So we were like, what is this?
That is
So that's
so
one example. Another one, just different words, not just mean the same, like different things, but just different words, period. Like for example, we call avocado, we say palta. And in Mexican Spanish, it's aguacate, right?
yeah.
I still try to remember. So just very different words like peanuts, we say mani. And then you guys say, wait, no, cacahuates, right?
Cacahuates, yeah.
And I'm like, terrible word. Like, it just sounds awful.
It
But
does sound really weird.
for us, it's mani. So with a lot of different words. So that was an adjustment as far as just communicating with Mexican Latinos here versus what we were used to, back home and kind of how we spoke Spanish.
Yes. No, I think I had the first time I saw what I think it obviously was Peru in regards to, I think it was like Me Too or BuzzFeed or something like
Mhm.
that, where they're like, they do those comparisons like, oh, what do you call this? Or what do you call this? People from
Yeah.
different Latin American countries. and I saw the tortilla and I'm like, what is that? That's so like and also
I mean,
people,
I'm assuming it came from Spain because in Spain it's the same thing. Like a tortilla is an omelet. So I'm assuming that's what the Peruvians kept that. While
yeah.
like in Mexican Spanish, they were like, no, this is our tortilla.
And I think another thing that a lot of people don't realize in Peru is there's a very big Japanese population, like Japanese Peruvian
Yeah.
culture there. Because I remember the first time when I saw like the president of Peru, and I was like, what? And
Do you know why there is a population of Japanese there?
I feel like I have heard it before, but please share.
So I found out, I did my little research, and there is a large population of Japanese and also like descendants of Japanese people in Peru because post World War II, when they did the internment camps for the Japanese in like California area, a lot of them traveled south to escape, to escape persecution, basically.
Right.
Many of them traveled to they wanted to stay coastal because of the ports and everything. So that a lot of them ended up in Peru. So that was kind of the big migration that happened. And since then, there's been, an Asian population there, Japanese population. And
Yeah,
our cuisine has a lot of Chinese influence. So I'm like, we're just all over the place.
wow. I mean, I know like this much Japanese. I can introduce myself in Japanese and I can count in Japanese
Mm.
and I can like say mushi mushi and like little things like that. But that's about it. I used to be in sales like 5 lifetimes ago, right? And I had a Japanese, I was proposing to a Japanese company. And so I introduced myself and I was like, oh, watashi wa desu desu. And he was like, oh, you speak good Japanese. And I was like, that's it. That's all I know.
Like,
Don't ask me to say anything else.
oh, that's awesome. I worked for a Japanese company for quite a while, like corporation. And a lot of people assume that I'm Asian, actually. It's a very
Yeah,
common misconception, but I don't actually have any in my family. I did the whole, what's it called, ancestry. So
right.
I have like my DNA that got analyzed and everything, and thinking like, okay, well, maybe there's a Japanese descendant somewhere in my family line or like family tree, but there is none. So I was
Okay,
like, I
so
don't know.
what's really interesting is because from what I understand, you guys please do not kill me because I'm just like trying to remember information that I feel like I've learned before. Before there was 7 continents, like it was just
Mm.
a really big land mass, and there
Mhm.
was a lot of migration between all of the land. So I know a lot of native, people, native populations to particular areas. There was a lot of migration. So even between like what we now consider Asia and South America and stuff, that there was a lot of um, mixing, but then it became just the native population in that area. And if you
Mhm.
look at like native populations from a particular area, I think even especially like even Peru and stuff, it does look, they are very like, you would look at them and think that there's an Asian influence. Do you have like that native blood in when you did your ancestry?
Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of my DNA is definitely like South American, a lot of South American, and also some because my dad's heritage is like Spaniard too. So he's got some Spaniard in there. My mom's part Brazilian. So I'm kind of like a melting pot. And I, funny enough, have like I counted because there's so many different countries within Africa. I am like 9% African and like not South Africa. It was like the
Yeah.
northern countries of Africa. I was like, that's interesting. I wonder at what point that happened, but I'm all over the place, but mostly South American, like Bolivian. There's Brazilian, definitely, because my mom's side, and then some European because of my dad's side, Spaniard side. So he's half
Yeah.
Spaniard. My mom's half Brazilian, but they're both Peruvian. So.
Yeah. Same. Like when I did mine, it's kind of a little bit of this. Now, like it's like slivers of all of these different things, but the
Mhm.
most like as far as individual thing, my biggest kind of slice of pie is indigenous. Um,
I didn't have too much of that. Well, at least that I can remember. I mean, there are so many little factors and whatnot, but I can't remember. But I don't think I saw that. Definitely nothing in North America as far as indigenous goes, but South American potentially.
Yeah, mine was indigenous from like Jalisco and like Arizona, like that bordering Arizona, Mexico part.
Oh,
Uh,
gotcha.
yeah, so that's where mine like, and that is like I think like 27%.
Oh, that's a high
So,
percentage. Okay.
yeah, but then then you see these other things like right because of colonization and everything. And look, I knew I'm a light-skinned Latina, and I knew I was gonna have European blood, but I'm not gonna lie, I was so disappointed when I saw how much. I was like, why? Why me?
I mean, I would think I would be darker because of mine is so minimal as far as like European descent. It's not that high, but anyway, here I am.
But that just goes to show, right? We come in all shades,
Oh,
we come
yep.
in
All
all
shapes, all
things. Like,
colors. Yep.
yeah, exactly. Like my mom is darker than I am. My
Same.
sisters, they can be very like, but in the summertime, I can get really like dark as well. And that's like two different people, right? In the summertime, I'm like probably like 4 shades darker than I am in the wintertime.
Exactly. Yeah. My dad is the lightest one. He's very light and he can't even tan. He's one of those. And then my
Same with
mom
my
is,
dad.
she's darker, and then her dad, my grandpa, was quite like they call it the indios from Peru. So he was much darker too. So we're all shades in the family.
Yes. So growing up, obviously you were saying that the Spanish was like one of the biggest things when to adjust to, and you still have to sometimes think about it and adjust in regards to
Yeah.
certain
Certain
words.
words.
So growing up, did you feel like you were part of a community growing up, or was there other Peruvians around you, or did you feel kind of like a little bit, because especially when you're a kid, I feel like if you're not of what everybody else is, it can be a very like weird thing to navigate. Is that something that you ever felt growing up, or were you just accepted as I'm Latina, I speak Spanish, so people get it, or were they just like you're not Mexican though?
Um, to be honest, I didn't experience, and I didn't grow up somewhere where it was centric. Like there wasn't a lot of Latinos, period, where I grew up. Like it was, I would say mostly white and Asian where I grew up. It's Torrance, California. Now it's a lot more Hispanics and Latinos and whatnot. But back when I'm 40 years old. So back then, back in my day.
Girl, it's okay. We checked the same box. I'm 46. You,
So yeah, I'm like
you don't
back
have
in
to
my
say
day, it was a different as far as population goes. So I was, there wasn't that many Hispanics, but there were some, of course. And I never, thankfully, never felt like an outsider, even like I had friends, like I mentioned, of like all backgrounds, all colors, like white, Latinos. I had Asian friends. They were all over the place. And I'm thankful, at least for the ones who I encountered. I never felt out of place. When I came, obviously, I didn't speak any English. But when I arrived, I was too late. It was like March. Actually, we just completed our 35 years of being in this country on March 25th. But when I came in March, so it was middle of school year or more than middle of school year. So I couldn't go into kindergarten. So I had to stay at home with grandpa and wait till the next school year. And I learned English by watching cartoons basically. So by the time I started school, I already learned English by myself.
what
So
was
I
your
didn't
favorite
really feel,
cartoon?
oh my gosh, back then, what was definitely something on Nickelodeon. I can't remember now exactly which cartoon. I loved Rugrats growing up. I do know that. I can't remember exactly which one actually taught me how to speak English, but by the time I started kindergarten that September, I I already thankfully had learned the language for the most part. Of course, I had more to learn, but I learned the language for the most part. And that was another adjustment actually. When I started school here, it's so different. Kindergarten in America is so different than I would assume in other Latin countries or maybe other countries, period, because I did more than half a year of kindergarten in Peru before I came. And there I was in the process of learning multiplication. I had already learned subtraction and addition, and I learned cursive already and printing. I came to the US and I started kindergarten that September, and we were playing with toys, we were building blocks, we were playing like house, and we were drawing. I'm like, what is this?
Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
and I didn't go to some like private school in Peru like my siblings did, but my parents, I think at the point that I started school, they were like, they already knew we were moving here. So they were like, well, we're not going to pay for private school for her. So I went to some janky little school. And even there, I learned all these things, you know? So that was very baffling to me at first. I was like, this is school? What is this? And I know I get like the reasons now, like looking back, that socialization and, you know, playing with others and
Yeah.
learning all those aspects of it. But I remember being super baffled.
Are you the youngest?
Yes, I have two older siblings.
Gotcha. Because like when you were saying a couple of things, I was like, oh, I wonder if she's the youngest. Do you feel like, because I feel like I'm the oldest of three girls. You're the youngest of three
I'm the
girls,
youngest.
right?
No,
Uh,
of three total. So I have an
oh,
older
three
brother and
total.
older
Oh, an older
sister.
brother. Okay, so three total. You're the youngest. So I always feel like the oldest, we feel like we always have to take care of everybody, right? We always have to, we're the ones who have to help our parents. Something happens, we're the ones who have to help our parents.
The oldest
So
daughter.
yeah, the oldest daughter. Thank you for clarifying. Yes. Me just being the oldest and the oldest daughter, it's just automatic. Right. Like I was the oldest, like I was the babysitter, but then I was also like, oh, we need to go clean up the poop. And I was the one who had to help because I was the oldest, regardless. Like I was like it's funny because my youngest sister was treated like she was daddy's girl. So my dad would give her the trims. He would like cut her hair like a little boy and stuff like that. But yet, like I was the one who would have to go and help, like do the like to move, to pick up the dog's caca, to do like all those crazy things, right? Yeah, that was really fun. But so do you think being the youngest, and I've never asked my sister this, so and this is probably actually a question I should ask her. Do you feel like that helped you with your creativity? Because I feel like the youngest in general tends to be the one who's most babied, who gets the most attention. I don't, and just I feel like sometimes it's interesting that they can go into a creative field because maybe they feel like they have more freedom to be creative, whereas the oldest, particularly the oldest girl, always feels the responsibility and burden of not being able to have that type of creative freedom, if that question makes sense.
Yes and no. So yes, it does make sense. But so I'll answer it as like a yes and no as far as me being the youngest contributing to my creativity. I mean, I was creative from a very young age. I always like I don't know how my parents let me do this, but I would doodle on my bedroom wall like with pencil. I was
Because
like
you were
just,
the youngest. That's
yeah, but
why.
so yes and no. It's not that I was spoiled, because this is me looking back. I'm like, it's not because I was spoiled and they let me do this. It's because they were exhausted and tired, and they were like, just like, forget it. Like just whatever, do what you want kind of thing. Because like I hate to say, I will say X, I was a surprise. So they had their boy and their girl, you know, and they were like, oh, cool, you know, that's it. And then I came along, you know, like 2 years later after my sister. So I think my parents were just more so exhausted, not so much like she's the baby, we're gonna just baby her and let her do what she wants. It was more so like, we are tired, we don't want to fight, we don't want to, nope, just whatever, do what you want, go, you know. But I think that's why. So from a very young age, I was always very creative. I was always doodling on whether it's paper or a wall, apparently. So that's kind of looking back, how I see it.
Yeah. So when you grew, like, is that something that you kind of grew into through as you got older, or did you ever feel, or was there ever a break where you're like, maybe this is not what I want, or maybe, or that's not how I want to phrase the question. I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase the question. Did you ever feel like there was like a limit to your creativity as you were growing up?
Yes. So not thankfully not too much. growing up in like elementary, middle school, maybe a bit stifled more in high school because you have to do like a lot of different type of courses, not so much like creative courses anymore. But then I would say it felt the most stifled post all my education, even post college. I felt like because I worked in corporate for so long in a marketing department, and I felt there working for a corporate global brand, I definitely felt stifled. Like I couldn't do what I wanted creatively because it's not the corporate way or whatever it may be. Like there's those, I had those limitations more so in my work experience. And that's kind of what spurred me on to like want to branch out on my own, which was a very difficult decision and choice, but I always felt very, stifled working for others.
So before I ask you these other questions that really kind of get into that, I'm going to ask you a couple of very random questions that popped into my head. One, Torrance High School, isn't that where Beverly Hills 90210 was filmed?
Yeah.
I mean, hello,
So
that was my era for sure.
excuse me. Yeah, so that's a little bit before my time, except for when they filmed the reunion, which was, so they came back to the school to film that. So I was a freshman when they filmed the reunion. So prior to like when the show was actually on air and everything in high school, I was before my time. But the
That is
reunion I
such a
was there
nice
for.
school. Holy
And then
crap.
they also filmed Buffy the Vampire Slayer there. And I was there that was also, I think, my freshman and sophomore year. And they would film
Nice.
while we're in class. Like you could see them filming like on the grass or in the
Oh,
courtyard. And you're
really?
like outside the window, you could see. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then my second random question is, didn't Michelle Kwan go to Torrance High School as well?
I believe so. And again, she's before my time, but yes, she did. She's from Torrance. I'm not sure if she went to Torrance High because we have 4 high schools in Torrance.
Okay.
So she might have gone to one of the different ones. And there's also a couple private schools. So I'm not sure which one she went to, but I know she is from Torrance. Yeah.
Yeah. See, just random, just some random questions. I put mascara on, but you really cannot tell. I am looking a little really super barefaced, but whatever. It is what it
I
is.
tried to brush my hair. It didn't really work out. It's fine.
I, yeah, I had to just put
I'm
it in a
like,
combo because I was like, nothing's going on today. I'm getting married in a couple of weeks, and
oh, congrats.
thank you.
Yay.
And
Where are you getting married here or are
in
you
San Diego,
traveling?
in San
Oh,
Diego,
okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Oh,
And I have
yay.
to get rid of these ganas, and so I have a hair appointment. So I was just like, I just can't do anything right now. It's just going up.
I do get the granny touch up just right here, this whole area.
Girl, I'm just like, what in the world? And I get it, just I have
Mm.
friends that get it like in between and stuff. And I'm like, no, I get it all right here in the front.
Mine tends to be like here. And my hair is so dark that you can always like see it like immediately. So I go at this point like almost monthly to get my little touch up.
Okay, you know what I've discovered between appointments is okay. Have you seen that commercial for Eva Longoria when her husband's like, oh, let me send me a picture, and she has her grays out. She's like, oh my gosh, I got a spray. I
Oh,
literally
I
use that stuff.
haven't. It
It's
works
it works. It's
and
by I
it
think
doesn't come off like on your hand.
well, you have to let it dry.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, once you let it dry, nah, it's good. Yeah. Until you
Oh,
wash
I
it right.
didn't. Okay.
I will use that to get rid of like the little ganas and everything just to
Like in between appointments. Oh, okay. That's good to know. I did not know that existed. So I'll
yeah, but
have
you want to
to.
spray it a little bit like definitely follow the instructions. If you spray it real close, then you can tell and then it takes forever to dry and you will get it on your hands. But
Hmm.
for anybody dealing with that, it's only like I think it's like $10 for a thing and it lasts a while because you don't have to spray it every single day. So depending on how I do my hair, like
Okay.
have it up in a chongo, I would just kind of do it up here.
Can I just do?
Yeah.
Okay. Good to
So
know. Good to know.
I got you, girl. Save you money.
Yes. Thanks. I appreciate it. I need it.
So now that let me veer back over to branding and everything. When did you figure out? Because I think growing up, we have all of these ideas, especially in high school, of what certain things are, right? But we don't, there's all of these different careers that we really don't know exist, or we don't know how to define them, and we don't know. So, how did you discover
Hmm.
branding and marketing? And how did you know that's what you wanted to do?
So I completely agree. Like you were just not aware that certain professions or niches rather exist. And I didn't know about branding specifically for quite a while, even post. I mean, again, when we were in school, like in I can say we because we're similar age range. But when we were in school, whether it's college or high school, we just had so much less information at our disposal. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have like Google search that can give you a million results for whatever you search for, very limited when we were growing up. So I definitely didn't. I knew I wanted to go into marketing by the time I like graduated like high school, for example, but I didn't know like what part of marketing exactly. So I went to junior college, like right after high school, because I wasn't sure. I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend like university money if I'm not sure yet. So because I had to also put myself through
Good for you,
school.
first of all. Good for you because so many I think we have this mindset of you have to go straight to university, but so many kids don't even know what
Um,
they want to do really.
it's just, I would assume it's just a waste of money, especially because I had to pay for it myself. So I'm like, I'm not going to waste that kind of money yet until I know. So I did go with the mindset of like, okay, something in marketing, but I'm not sure exactly what, whether it's the business side or the creative side. I was always a creative person. So I always assumed creative, but like, do I want to do advertising? Do I want to do PR? Whatever. I was kind of trying to decide. And then they basically call like our junior college that's local here, they call it 13th grade. So, you basically go there kind of like deciding what you want to do. So I took my sweet time there. I took it took 3 years there. And then I finally, okay, I'm gonna get my shit together and like travel and like move to transfer over to a university. So I did. I went to Cal State Fullerton once I decided, because they have a really good creative marketing program. Like Cal State Long Beach probably has the best like business marketing program that, and not MBA. Well, yes, MBA, but business marketing. And I'm like, well, I don't like numbers. I'm not, I don't like that part of it really. It's not my jam. Definitely more creative. They do advertising, marketing, digital marketing, all that stuff at Fullerton more so. So that's why I
That's where
chose
my
to go
sister went
there.
to school. She
Titans,
Yeah,
woo!
she used to play for their softball team.
Oh, awesome. I know that they have really good baseball and I think softball too. Like the teams are
Yeah.
really good. So yeah, I went there and then once I got there, I was like, I'm gonna, ponte las pilas. And like I got through it like 2 years, like back to back. I did all my classes and I was working full time at the same time. So to put myself through the school, thankfully they had a deferred payment program. So you can pay a tuition in 4 parts throughout the semester with no interest for students. So I did that, got myself through it. But I will, to this day, especially with the information at everyone's disposal and online courses and online workshops and everything, I definitely learned the bulk of what I know now, either self-taught um, or in work experience. Like what I learned in college, I was like, maybe 10% of what I use day to day in my business. Like you don't need, I would obviously, if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, then yes, of course you need university, you need that kind of education. But a bulk of the professions out there, present day, this day and age, like you really don't need it.
No, you know what? I'm glad you said that for two reasons. One, there's unfortunately there's places that are like you need to have in order to get a job,
Yeah.
have your degree, right? But I'm glad you said that because that's something that we talked about a few episodes back in regards to entrepreneurship and in regards to like theory is different than practice. What you learn in school is theory, right? But practice
It's
outside
so
of that
different.
is so, oh my gosh, it's so different. And I went to
Yes.
school for public relations, so I totally get that, right? You have all of these things, and I'm like, but that's not what we did. Like, oh, I had a similar situation because I was already working in it, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not what we actually did. Like, you think that,
Yeah.
but that's not what actually happens because it doesn't figure people into the mix. It just figures facts into the mix. And it doesn't, it forgets when
Exactly.
the theory forgets people, the people factor, which
Yes.
changes everything.
Which you do learn some if you do internships, which I did do two internships while I was finishing college at the university. I did one for FBI recruitment, like in their recruiting marketing department, and then I did the other one at KTLA. So those were good experiences because you're hands-on, you're in person, and you're learning from mentors or whatever, whoever's there to guide you and teach you. So I think that's definitely helpful. But yes, as far as what you learn in the classroom and those places, it's very, like you said, theory based, and it's very different to put it into practice, like in real life situations.
So let me ask you this. When you graduate and you start looking for a job and everything, and this is what I found. So I'm wondering if you had a similar experience because I feel like a lot of people kind of do. I when I was looking for PR agencies to apply for, one of the things that I always look for is diversity in a company, right? And I would go to like meet our team and everybody, and actually there's two things I want to say. Everybody would basically like look the same with different shades of hair, right? Like maybe they had one black woman or one black man, maybe they had one Asian, but for the most part, like diversity was non-existent, and I rarely saw Latina. Now, not that you could tell just by looking or just by a surname because somebody might be married, but I just never felt like I ever saw myself represented in these spaces. And speaking, and then I actually saw TikTok yesterday, and I refer to TikTok a lot because I end up like getting sucked into it, but you learn so much information. And the girl was saying, like, she was saying she does branding, she does marketing, she works with large companies, and they're like, oh, we want to be more diverse. And she's like, okay, I've given you, um, you know, Asian men, Asian women, Latinos, I've brought you African Americans, I've brought you plus size, LGBTQ, trans, blah, blah, blah. What do you mean diverse? And they're like, oh, well, we want some more blondes and redheads. That was their idea of diverse, right? So when you start looking for a job, what was your experience when you were what were you looking for when you were looking for a job? And two, did that have any effect on if you were applying for a specific job or not?
I would say when I finished college, well, mind you, I was already working through college. So for a while, I did keep the job I had, and it was in marketing, but it was a very small company from when I was working myself through college. And I did stay there for a bit. But once I started to look elsewhere to something bigger, I guess you could say, I did. It tended to be in male dominated industries at first that were, that had the openings, that had the interviews, etc. And I would say that would probably be the main factor from when I started to look at first was a lot of male, because they were more like corporate brands at first that I would work for. And one of them actually ended up being as a Japanese company. So it was like 90% Japanese men because it was, again, auto industry and Japanese owned. So it was 90% like Japanese men. And then there's very small percentage of women. And I was thankful at that job that I was there for like 6 years in the marketing department. The actual marketing department was probably the most diverse, while every other, like, the product planning, the technical engineer departments, those were all like, the men, and like mostly Asian men too. But thankfully the marketing department was a lot more diverse. I had uh, it was a team of, I think we were like 7 or 8, and five of us were women. Two of them were men, one of them Latino. So it was a pretty diverse group. So I was thankful to always kind of encounter groups, or jobs rather, where I didn't really feel, I mean, it could be where I grew up too, because, it's fairly diverse. LA, especially, is a lot more diverse than I would say, like, if you're getting a job in the Midwest or something. So I didn't encounter too much of like, oh, I'm the only woman or the only Latina here. I didn't thankfully experience too much of that. I would say maybe a couple times in the interview process of like looking for a job and applying for something, where I felt like maybe I didn't get it because, one, I'm a woman, or two, because I don't fit the mold of the others in the agency, for example. Um, But thankfully, that the ones that I actually worked at, I didn't really feel that too much.
Gotcha. That was weird. My voice, I don't know what happened to my voice
Very,
there.
very sultry right there.
Can I make that happen all the time, please? So at what point did you decide, like how many companies, because you said you worked for corporate where you're just like, ugh, I got over it. Like, was there something like in particular that made you do it? Like that made you go like, I can't do this anymore. I just need to start going out on my own.
Yeah, so I went from the corporate life, and it's one of those situations because I was there for like 6, 7 years, and I felt with that company, it was more so I got comfortable. And I wanted to leave, but I was like, it's so steady here. I get a raise every year. I mean, it's minimal raise every year, but I got a raise every year. I get to travel here and there for work. I was comfortable, even though I like the industry itself, auto industry, is not my like it's not, I'm not into it, like it's not my passion at all. I'm just kind of like, this is boring, but I'll do it anyway. So I got comfortable, which complacent. And then that company moved their headquarters from Torrance to Michigan, and so they left me actually. They did offer me to go with them, and like they'll say, we'll pay for your part of your housing if you move with the company, blah blah. But I was like, I'm not gonna move to Michigan. I was like, so they ended
That's
up
a
leaving.
big
It was
move.
like yeah, and it was a blessing in disguise that happened because it forced me to like, all right, you gotta go out and find something else, or like do something else. So that was a blessing in disguise that happened. So after that, I did go to agency life, thinking, oh, maybe this will be different because with an agency, you get different clients, so it should be more creative in that sense because you're having different kinds of clients. And it was a boutique agency, like a creative marketing agency, digital marketing, and I got put into the video team, so the video editing team. So I became the senior video editor. But who was our biggest client? An auto industry client. I was like, oh my God, I can't escape. so it was then, and then pandemic hit, and I was commuting from Redondo Beach to Pasadena, which was easily an hour and a half drive each
I was
way.
like,
Each
that
way.
is a long drive.
It's basically the entire 110 stretch of that freeway. The one, I'm not sure if you're familiar, the 110 freeway is basically that entire stretch. So it's
I
hour
was
and a
telling
half.
you that it's about an hour, 15 minutes to an hour and a half between downtown San Diego to my parents' house. That would be like,
That's basically
and
that
that's
was
with
my
no
commute
traffic.
every day. Yeah. And that was for me, it was, office hours. So I had to be there like by 9 and then leave at 5. Oh my, it was a nightmare. I was like, I felt like my soul slowly dying with each drive. Some people can do commutes and like do it for years and be fine. I'm not one of those people. Like I feel like I'm wasting my life away doing that. And I was starting to get so miserable. Like I did roughly like what I was doing. So video editing is fun, but again, the content was just not interesting to me. It's auto again. I'm like, how did I end up in auto again? um, like, and the people I worked with were very cool too, but the commute was killing me. So then when the pandemic hit, it was like work from home, and I was like, sweet, everything's gonna be great now because I'm working from home. But it turns out that like our big name clients and combination with my upper management, which again, I think they were just at the beck and call of the client. I think they all assumed like, one, she's not commuting anymore, so she has extra free time. And two, they probably thought like, oh, it's pandemic, so she's going to be at home anyway. She should just be working, And mind you, I was salary. So it's not like I was getting overtime, but I was easily working like 13-hour days constantly. Mind you, getting only paid for like 8-hour days because it's salary. So that was like starting to kill me instead of the commute. That was killing me. I was like chained to my desk because with video editing, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but you work on a big timeline. So you can't really like pick up a small laptop and go to the beach and work on video editing. And, like you can't work like that because you also have to have a million hard drives attached to your computer. So you can't like just go anywhere. I'm chained to
I
my
just
desk
do my
basically.
mini podcast video editing, or I do many like I do many things. but I know to do a big thing, you
I
have
was gonna say it's a bit easier working with audio because the files aren't as large, but with video, like raw files, oh my, it's huge. And you have like big hard drives and like you have multiple ones because of, if it's different days, they'll use a different hard drive. And so it's almost impossible to work off-site if you're working on video editing. You're like chained to your desk basically. So I was just slowly dying inside, and I would express that to my husband. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, like even though like it's good pay, but I'm like dying inside and I want to leave. Like I want to leave to start my own thing. I expressed that to him, and he's like, all right, it's like, well, let's look and see if we're in a good place where, because we knew like if I did this, it's gonna be a huge pay cut, like no matter what. So I have to build my own clientele if I'm gonna leave. I wasn't at a point where I didn't have any free time to do it as a side gig first. I wish I did, but I didn't because I was working like 13-hour days. So I was like, any time extra time I have, I want to like sleep. So we made the choice after like deciding, okay, we have a little cushion that if I leave to start on my own, like I can, we can take the hit, the financial hit at the time, thankfully, considering I left like in the beginning of a pandemic. It was October 2020 when I left.
and
So it
that's a
was,
huge, huge gamble, not just because
yeah,
obviously but because so many companies were cutting marketing budgets and everything.
yes.
So that's like how
That's another,
to
I
make
know.
that.
That's another thing. It's like right before I put in my 2-week notice, I had my review, like my performance review with the company I was at, the agency. And they ended up giving me a raise, a pretty decent raise too, and telling me that I can work because they knew my commute was really tough. So they were like, we can promise you that you'll be able to work remotely like forever, basically. So you won't have to come back to the office. And I'm like, oh my God, they're giving me more money and telling me I can work from home like forever and I'm still gonna leave. Like I was like, am I doing the wrong thing? I was like so scared. I've never not had like health insurance or things like that too. So that was also a tough thing to leave aside from the steady paycheck. So I was literally like I was scared shitless and had taken that pay cut. And at that point, yeah, my husband and I did get married in 2020. So I was able to get on his insurance, at least health insurance, so I could at least mooch off of that. But yeah, I chose to leave anyway. I was like, because the situation itself of me working like 10, 12, 13-hour days is not gonna get better. I don't see it getting better. As again, that's not worth it to me for the big paycheck and things like that. So yeah, that's what made me, and I had wanted to start my own business for like a long time. I was just, too scared to do it. That's bottom line. I was too scared to do it on my own, too scared to leave the steady paycheck and all that stuff. So that's when
So
I
what
chose
would
to leave.
oh God, that's girl, that's like I mean, I know a lot of businesses started during the pandemic and everything, but to voluntarily leave at
I
that.
know.
Well, and I mean, I will say this to not just voluntarily leave, because I feel like a lot of people were doing that because it was like the great exodus, right? Of people just, but it was also, but just also in regards to just the kind of industry that you work in with so many like, I guess marketing, it was cut, but it was maybe shifted because people still needed stuff. People were trying to like, but that it was, oh my gosh, just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Seriously, to have that kind of courage and guts to just be
Yeah.
like, but still being afraid. I think that's so notable. You're like, am I doing the right thing? Because so often I think we hear stories of like, I'm just gonna do it. Girl, I would like, I wish I could just be like that all the time. I'm just gonna do it. Now I'm like, I just want something to come in,
I know. And the first year was very hard because not, you have to invest in your new business. Like I had to get all like the business licensing, the sole proprietorship. I had to get, with the city, I had apparently working from home, I have to have a license to do that if I have my own business. And I'm like, what? So little things like that, getting, business accounts set up. And so there's an investment. So my actual like profit the first year was like I think it was redline. I don't know. It was abysmal, and I had to work on getting my clients and kind of establishing myself. And So the first year was very hard, and I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna regret this? But thankfully, since then, every single year thereafter has been like, whether it's like double the profit or triple, and so I've definitely have grown my business, and I have no regrets at this point.
So your business is called the Creative Inca. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's a nod to your Peruvian, to Peru. Uh,
Yes.
and I like, I'm on the website right now and I want to read this because I like this. It says, "You haven't come this far just to blend in, right? We design humanized brands and websites for gutsy entrepreneurs and businesses who are ready to rise above the cookie cutter crowd and be unmissable with a strategy first approach." What was it like? You were like, okay, here I am. And I love your like it's your side profile. I
It
love that
is.
photo of you. Bro, I love it. Seriously. It's a beautiful picture.
Thank you.
But I like, here you are. You've been kind of working in auto for all this long time, right? And then you're like, okay, I got to do my own thing. What was it that made you go, okay, this is like, how long did it take you? Because I feel like to not only say I'm going to do this, but to actually go from the idea to execution, because I feel like sometimes that can be the longest part because we want everything to be perfect, but nothing is ever perfect, right? So how long did it take you to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do, and to actually do it and then say, okay, this is where I'm focusing in on as far as website and branding?
So when I initially started my business, I mean, I toyed with different names to start. At first, I was like, do I do? I think I wanted Inca Creative, but that was taken. Someone in Australia has it. And I'm like, damn it. So I had to go back to the drawing board. Anyway, I landed on the Creative Inca. But when I first launched, I did launch as a digital marketing expert. Like I wasn't focused on just branding. Oh my God, it was a laundry list of services. Like because everything I knew how to do, I basically put in services. So I was like, I know how to do this, after all, I have at this point over 15 years of experience. I'm like, I could do all these things, It's like, oh, I'll put in there like copywriting, I'll put in there, PR, I'll put in there, um, photography, because I've dabbled in that before. I definitely put video editing in there because I know how to do it. I put social media in there, social media marketing. I did that for so long when I was in that corporate job. So I put like everything under the sun for like under the digital marketing umbrella. And it just, very long story short, I very quickly figured out things I know how to do, but I don't love to do. Like that's kind of how I narrowed things down. Like, do I love doing this service, or do I like just do it because I know how? And social media fell under that. Like I know social media marketing very well. I can do it. Do I like doing it for others? No. I don't like to do it for others. It's exhausting, more so than people realize. And same with other service. I forget what else I had, like marketing strategies and whatever. I'm like, do I love doing that for other businesses? Like, no. So like I just started trimming down my services like a lot. I'm like, what do I actually enjoy doing? And that's kind of how I landed on brand and website, which a lot of people don't know what branding is specifically. It basically falls under the graphic design umbrella in marketing, of course. So branding, people assume it's just like logos and colors and some fonts, but it's really so much more than that. It's so much more than just logo design. It's you're thinking of your business as if it were a person, like the brand personality, the brand messaging.
The
Does their message
language.
language, yeah, like what kind of language do you use? What kind of tone of voice do you use in all of your messaging, whether it's your website or your social or your Instagram or social media captions? Like, do they all sound the same? That means that you have a cohesive brand. If it sounds all disjointed, like your website sounds like very corporate, but then like your Instagram, it's all like bright and bubbly. It's like there's a big disconnect there. So that's kind of that's what I help small businesses figure out, especially because many kind of, they start their business without knowing any of this stuff. So me taking them through these exercises on figuring out who their brand personality is. And again, I think the biggest not misconception, the biggest issue that I say small business owners have is that they try to create their they DIY their branding often because they don't have the budget to yet invest in like a professional designer. But two, they think that they should design for what they think looks good and, you know, and looks pretty, whatever. But you're not buying from yourself. You have to design a brand that will resonate with your target audience, not for yourself, because you're not buying from yourself. And more often than not, I would say 90% of the time, you're not your own target audience. Like you're not who you should be talking to, you know?
No, that's so true. That's so true because I always say, me being in PR, I can't do my own PR. It's very hard for me to
Mm-hmm.
take myself because people are like, well, just act like you're your own client. And I'm like, but it's hard to remove yourself from it because you're so emotionally attached to it, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
emotionally attached to your own business. So if somebody were to work with me, I'd be like, yeah, let's do this, have all these ideas. And then when it comes to me, I'm like it's like I get analysis paralysis, so to
And then
speak.
it takes us forever. Like when I did my own, oh, another factor is when I did first launch, I looked at my whole branding, everything looked so different because I thought, you know, me coming from corporate and agency life, I thought I had to be all put together in like a blazer all the time. And like I had to, the way my voice was had to be very like professional, like otherwise no one would take me seriously. And thankfully, 2 years in, I was like, I need to rebrand. This is not me like this. And I need to be me to attract the clients that I want, like in that way, you know, like that are attracted to my kind of personality. So I did do a rebrand, and my rebrand took forever because I am my own worst critic. And same, I think what you were just saying about PR, like doing your own PR. It's like same for me doing my own brand. Took for so long because I'm my own worst critic. You
Yeah, oh my god,
overthink things, you overthink everything, and yeah.
like okay, I will say one of the things you said, the DI this means saying goodbye to that DIY logo you put together from a Canva template. Thankfully I have a friend who I was one of her very last design pieces that she did. She's the one who designed my logo because if I were to do it, no, that would be a no-go. That cookie cutter logo you bought from Etsy, the scattered in real life and online brand presence, that logo from the early 2000s, being embarrassed by your website or having an ineffective website that doesn't convert. Let's ditch the DIY. I love that because I'm not even gonna lie. I did my own website because I couldn't afford to hire
And
somebody.
yeah, and that's that's a respectable roadblock. You know, people don't always have the budget to invest in it, but that's kind of where I come in when you do have the budget to invest in your rebrand. Or some startups, you know, have that money saved and they're ready to go with like professional branding from the get-go. But for the most part, most people start with DIY. So that's, understandable.
Yeah. So where do you go okay, when you start with somebody, like what's the first things that you tell people what they should be ready to do when when they work with you, right? When they get started, like what are those first couple of things that people should be prepared for when they're getting started to do this whole thing?
A close collaboration. So I always do discovery calls before I officially take on a client to make sure that we're both a good fit. So one, I have a form on my contact page on my website that asks some preliminary questions for me to know kind of what industry they're in and kind of and what they're looking for, what kind of project, what do they need help with, where are they struggling with basically, and also kind of to get an idea of their budget as well. And then if it seems like it would be a good fit, I'm interested in the industry and the business that they have, then I send them my scheduler. And then once we do a discovery call, which is basically a virtual call like this, um, that's where I kind of go in as far as my process and tell them like this is a very close collaboration. So I just want to make sure that you have the time to dedicate to it. I'm not a mind reader. And for me to create something for your business that's effective and strategic and mind-blowing, I need like the feedback from you back and forth. Like it needs to be a close collaboration. Like I don't just like I mentioned before, strategy first and design later. That's the strategy part is, like we do a brand workshop, we do a brand questionnaire that's very lengthy, and then we go over it in the workshop, make sure that I understand like what their business is, understand all their answers, make sure we're always on the same page, basically. And that, thankfully, that process of mine has worked very well in that once we go through that strategy, propose a creative direction via what's kind of like a mood board, but I call it a stylescape because it's a little bit more intentional and bigger. I have very rarely had someone say like, this isn't quite working for me. Like, I don't think this is what I had in mind. Like, it's always like fairly spot on with like almost no revisions ever after I present like their brand concept and brand presentation. So I find it's a very effective process, but it is a close collaboration. So it's not just you answering like 5 little questions and then I design something and here you go. It's very a very lengthy collaboration.
What's like the average time that people, between like getting started and like, yay, you have your own amazing, beautiful website.
So it depends. So I do have 2 packages for brand and 2 packages for website. So it really depends on kind of where they are in business. Like I have what's called a brand Kickstarter, which is basically a starter brand package. So you still get strategy, but it's a little bit more minimized. And and you get a little bit less deliverables as far as the brand assets. But it's also shorter timeline. So for that brand project, I would say it's probably like 3 to 4 weeks for the starter one. And then and that's meant for, startups or a business on a budget, they'll usually go for that. And then if you are like you've been in business for 2, 3+ years, you're pretty established, you're doing really well, then you likely, but you had the DIY or you have a super old outdated logo. Like I had a client who had a hair salon and she was gonna celebrate her 10-year anniversary of having her business, her hair salon. She's like, like the logo I've used for this long, she's like, I don't care for it. It doesn't represent us, She's like, I'm ready for like a full rebrand and like to celebrate the 10 years. So she brought me on for a full rebrand, which is like the full brand package. And you get the full strategy, you get all the bells and whistles. So for that one, it definitely takes longer. I would say it's more like 5 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, depending. So, depends on a few factors, but so it's pretty lengthy for either one. And then website, again, depends if we're doing a full-blown 7 to 10 page website or if we're doing a minimal, like, 3 to 4 page one, then it's much faster. So I would say between 4 to 5 weeks for the smaller one, and then definitely much longer, like 7 to potentially 10 weeks for the big websites.
Over the years, has there been anything like has there been any moments where where you felt like you failed? Like where you're obviously we learn from failure, right? Failure does not have to be a bad thing. But was there ever that moment where you just felt like you were going to give up or that you were just like you felt like why am I even doing this? Why am I even bothering? And what did you do to kind of get yourself out of that?
Within that first year, like I mentioned, because it was really hard doing it, especially after that first year, like toward the end of that first year, I would say maybe a year and a half, actually. I was kind of like, why am I doing this still? Like I'm barely making money at this point. Um, and while I do love what I'm doing, like I don't have yet a steady flow of clients. And I just find that there was a disconnect. Again, like I mentioned, remember I mentioned when I launched, I was very corporate looking and professional looking. And it just wasn't me. So I sat myself down myself because I had at that point I didn't really have many other small business owner friends. So I sat myself down and there wasn't, any communities yet that I was a part of as far as like, entrepreneurship. So I was like, well, what's holding me back or why am I not resonating with who I want to resonate with? And that's when I figured out there's a disconnect, like who I'm putting out on social media and who I'm putting out on my website. It's not me. Like it's not, and especially because I'm the face of my business, It's not like I run a little agency with multiple employees. Like, no, I'm the face of my own business. So it's a personal brand. And I'm like, it just doesn't represent who I am. I'm a sarcastic, I'm sassy, like I'm gonna put that out into the world and see what happens. Like that's to truly represent me. And I did that, and that helped a ton, like threefold of getting like the responses and the people, clients reaching out, potential clients reaching out who I actually like wanted to work with, and like the business and industries that I wanted to attract really started to kind of come together. Obviously, it wasn't like a snap of my fingers, like I rebranded and instantly it happened. It was still like a brand building process, but I think that's where my turnaround happened, when I was embracing like who I am publicly and not
Yeah.
trying to be like so professional all the time.
Well, that's so funny. I mean, because you see it in your website. I was just saying, oh my gosh, I love this photo of you. I love the profile. So you could tell it's definitely who you are, and being a proud, Peruvian woman as well. Like you get that from the name, I love the whole thing. So I could see why that works so much more for you than being like really I'm not same. I'm not really corporate. I mean, like I had new photos taken and I'm drinking. I mean, hello, wine and cheese, man. I'm drinking wine.
I was gonna say you have to.
Yeah, what would it if I wasn't holding a glass of wine or drinking wine in any of my photos, like that would just be weird. How am I supposed to come up?
I have some brand photos me drinking whiskey. So there you go. Oh, actually, some of the first time I had brand photos done, or no, second, I did have actual whiskey in there, but the last time I did a brand photos, like there wasn't alcohol allowed in the studio, so I just did a what's it called? I put water in coffee so that it looks like whiskey.
Let
So,
me
yeah.
tell you. Okay, so these photos that I have where I'm not drinking the actual wine because I didn't realize. So I have you know what a Coravin is? So a
No.
Coravin is like you put it into it's a wine preservation system. So you basically put the needle
Oh.
into the cork, push the button, it puts gas into the bottle to preserve the wine and while it's pouring out wine. So you can have it for like instead of having it, that wine will last you like 4 to 6 weeks being
Oh.
instead of having to pop it open and it being done in like a day or two, right? Well, I didn't realize that this bottle, and it only works on natural corks. I didn't realize this bottle I had put the Coravin in had a synthetic cork. So when I took the
Oh.
bottle and I opened it, it had gone bad. The wine had gone bad. It was
Oh
gross.
no.
But you couldn't tell, right? Unless you really looked at it. So in the photos, you couldn't tell. But I'm doing like I'm holding the bottle like to or the glass to my lips, and it stunk. It
Oh no.
it was so bad. It was so bad. And a couple of times I actually got it like a little bit on my lips, and I'm like, oh, this is so gross. It was so gross. The things that we do, right? For a photo,
Yes,
things that we
for
do.
the photo op.
It was, but this is real wine. It's almost gone. The glass I've gotten is almost gone. No nastiness here.
No nastiness.
No,
All
I could
good
have
there.
pour that. I could pour all of that out. I was like, thank goodness. It was like you couldn't tell, but it was like brown. Like the wine had turned brown.
Oh my God.
It was horrible. Um, Final thanks because I want to respect your time. One of the things that you said is obviously what we were talking, you're one of the few Latina brand and website designers in the industry. What does that mean to you being able to be a Latina in this space, and being able to take up space and show others that this is a viable option for them?
I feel I put myself out there like unapologetically that I am who I am. I am a Latina in the industry, and just kind of working on cementing my name in there, because yeah, those in my industry that at least that I'm connected to, like on online space and everything, especially these days, so many of us are just online and not, we don't have like a brick and mortar. Um, but yeah, just honestly, just putting myself out there and taking up that space and not apologizing for it, or not being like, excuse me, am I allowed in here? Like, no, it's like I've just doing it, basically doing it scared sometimes, sure, but doing it. So
Have
that's
you
really my motto for it.
I love that. Have you worked with other Latinas? Like in regards to like photographers and PR professionals. So to build your own community to say, okay, this is what I do, but I have somebody who can do this. I know I can connect you with this people, this people, this people.
I am a part of quite a few networking groups at this point, but yes, I have had definitely clients. Like, for example, right now I am working with my client who owns a social work like innovation service, and she's a Latina too. She's in LA. I've worked with brand photographer. Both of them that I've worked with are Latinas. I think you know one of them, Kita.
I had a feeling you were going to say Kita.
Yeah, so I've worked with Keith. She's actually one of my clients right now too. Where I'm doing the Cafecita con Jefas branding, which
Oh,
I'm
you are?
close to finishing. But
Oh,
so working with her, I'm part of that community as well. So yeah, I'm part of various communities, and we all kind of recommend each other, which is great. So then we can take up space in different areas that we are all a part of separately. So I do love that.
yes. I feel like I need to make sure that I do feel like I'm like, oh, I need to connect you with so and so and so and so. But I feel like, you know, being part of like the We All Grow community and everything, I've connected with so many that I sometimes forget about so and so, like certain things. And it's so important that we say those names and we share each other's successes, and we bring each other up in rooms that we're not in. This actually just recently happened to me, where I created the very first directory of Latina wine brands based in the United States. And
Awesome. Congrats.
thank you. And I really need help with the directory. I know that there's a better way to do the directory, but you know, um, a friend of mine was from San Diego. She was at this event in Stanford and met another wine, like, we're constantly looking for Latina owned wine brands. They're based here. And somebody was there who's a small brand, and she was like, hey, have you heard of the Wine and Chisme? Have you heard of my friend? This is what she's doing. And then they reached out to me, and I don't think we realize how much of an impact that makes. Like, I got the message from this, wine brand, and I started crying because somebody else said my name in a room that I was in a room I was not in. So I love that you're working with all of these other Latinas, and that everybody's kind of continually uplifting each other and sharing ideas and sharing all of these things, because it's so, so important that we do that. Because for a long time, especially with me, like when I was coming up and everything, that wasn't the case. It was like there was one Latina, and that was like they weren't uplifting everybody else. It was like very cutthroat, and now to see how much that has evolved and changed, and to be able to like say, oh my gosh, look at the amazing things that she's doing, and let's applaud her and let's give her all her flowers. I love, love, love that. I want to give everybody an opportunity to share anything that maybe we didn't talk about, that we didn't touch on, because I feel an hour just goes by so quick.
It does.
So if
That it
there's
does.
anything else, I know if there's anything else you want to share, please do so.
Okay, I mean, mostly I would say if they can connect with me on Instagram, that is where I am the most active, and it's obviously at the Creative Inca. I am trying to be more active on LinkedIn because that is a great resource to get clients. But again, baby steps. Instagram is where I am most active. I do stories and posts all the time. So I would love to connect to people on there.
And we will make sure to have all of your social media handles on the show notes as well, and your website on there. So thank
Yay.
you so much, Jo. I had such a good time learning
Me
about.
too. I wish I could have had wine with you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's a girl. You know what? You got to
My
take care.
tummy said no.
Yeah, you got to take care of you first. I totally understand. I finished mine. There's, that's
Well
all there.
done.
So until next time, mi gente. Hola, mi gente. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. If you would like to hear more wine and more chisme, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Saludos.